Well, I've seen and Ukraine's NATO facility.
And we are back once again, still adjusting myself to the new camera, which is not new, it's just the same cell phone, but on the other way around. And it looks like it's backwards. And we have, again, of course, it's LarryCJohnson's show today. LarryCJohnson, how are you doing, my friend?
I am well. It looks like you got a new broadcast studio.
It's the same, just the camera is better. Now you can see it.
Oh, okay. Well, the way it was set up before, the door was on the left.
Yeah, and I had to, mirror the camera because it's the same camera. It's the same cell phone. I use the cell phone as a camera, but
Okay,
I was using the
back.
selfie.
Okay, now you're back. The door's back on the left.
Okay, the door is on the right
2 minutes ago,
place.
the door was on the right. I'm going, oh, this is...
This is weird. Yeah, that's why I
yeah.
have to mirror, because I'm not used to the wrong side of things here. How are you doing, man? Looks like things are getting slightly better.
Yeah.
Depending on the point of view. Perhaps for me, it's going worse.
That's the key phrase, the point of view. If you're one of the Europeans, man, this has been a bad week. Last week and a half has been terrible.
And if you're Zelensky, do you know that Iron Maiden song, The Sands of Time for Me Are Running Low?
Yeah.
Man, I was watching the Security Council in Munich. The man looks like a dead man walking. I have no better phrase to define it than dead man walking.
Yeah, well, the United States policy vis-a-vis Ukraine is now fundamentally changed, and neither Zelensky or the Ukrainians, they're still in like the first of Kubler-Ross's 5 stages of grief. They're in denial. Can't believe it. No, that can't be true. But no, it is true, and Trump has opted to try to restore normal relations with Russia. Now, this is not an altruistic move by Trump. It's actually a very cynical move. It is designed to try to curry favor with the Russians to the point that we can convince Russia to screw China. This is all about going after and defeating China, ultimately. And I think I don't think it will succeed. I think, while we like to say that the Russians are pretty tough negotiators, etc., they've been bamboozled in the past. I mean, they got completely blinkered in the Minsk I and Minsk II agreements. They had defeated the Ukrainian push in Bakhmut. At the time it was called Debaltseve, and after that they halted their offensive operations under Minsk II. Well, we learned later from Holland and France and the German Prime Minister. Merkel, that this was all just a cynical move to buy time for Ukraine. So, the Russians now realize they were screwed. They trusted and they got fooled. They were promised that this car was driven once by a little old lady only on Sunday and it only has 5,000 miles on it. Then They finally get in the damn car and realize it's been driven 400,000 miles, and it was used as a pace car at the racetracks. So, Russia realized, Russia got fooled. But they're, fool them once, but then they say, you don't get to fool me twice.
Yeah, the Russians, there's another thing, they are good at history. They kind of understand history slightly better than we do in the West. And, Rafael Machado, which is another friend of the channel, he used to say that the Russians are much alike the Brazilians. We kind of do things on the way and we patch things together, WD-40 plus, silver tape, it's perfect combining. And at the same time, I have some reluctances to believe some things. In the case of Russia, I always remember this the phrase that Gonzalo Lira used to say, which is, you go to war with what you have, not with what you're gonna get.
Right.
And on that moment, during Minsk 1 and Minsk 2, I think Russia knew that they were not ready. We are talking about 10 years ago. And that's 15 years after the restart of rebuilding Russia after a complete economic collapse. And I have a Russian friend from CERN, and we used to talk about that, about Crimea. I'm talking about perhaps almost 8 years ago. And he used to say that about Syria, especially when Russia helped Syria, bombing ISIS and all that. He used to say that, if you talk to any Russians in 2002 and say to them that in 2015 Russia would be, putting a stop to all this entrepreneurship, getting closer to Russia with military force, no one would believe. Every Russian would say, hell no, we are just a broken ass country. And I have deep inside, I do believe that at some point they knew they were getting bamboozled on that, especially on Minsk 1 and Minsk 2. I'm not saying that they do not get bamboozled every now and then. I do believe they do, as Machado says, they kind of do things on the way. But I also believe that at that point they knew they had no force to keep going. And when it started this time, they said, okay, we have to get things done. We have to solve this problem once and for all. This is my personal belief. Of course, can also be wishful thinking. But one point that I think it's very important that you just mentioned is that, Trump is what do you say, is not doing charity or stuff like that.
Yeah.
And there's one thing that I always remember from first Trump administration, that he wanted to ditch NATO so badly. He always wanted to ditch NATO. And all these things that are happening now, it almost sounds like, yeah, we're kind of ditching you. So please go away. Please go away. We don't want you. We don't want to be part of that anymore. What do you think about that, Larry?
Well, no, this Trump's animus towards at least part of NATO is a function, and particularly against the United Kingdom, is a consequence of their role that they played back in 2015, 2016 in Russiagate. So Russiagate was not just an operation of the FBI and the CIA. It also involved British intelligence, both MI6, GCHQ, as well as intelligence services in Europe and Israel. And Trump knows that now.
All that thing from Stephanopoulos, Papadopoulos, I always forget the name of the guy.
George Papadopoulos.
George Papadopoulos. That was born in MI6, I would say.
Yeah, no,
right?
It started in Britain. So Trump recognizes that these so-called allies have been working to destroy his presidency and prevent him from becoming president. I think he has little interest in maintaining a relationship with them, but he's not going to be openly confrontational, other than except, what J.D. Vance did and what Pete Hegseth did at the Vance was at the Munich Security Conference, and Hegseth was at that NATO defense ministers meeting on Ukraine, and they delivered some very stern reminders that, hey, there is a new sheriff in town, and it's not business as usual, and you guys basically you're in charge of protecting Europe, not us. We're going to stop spending money. We're going to stop carrying the economic burden. Europe's like this terrible girlfriend. She's always insisted that you go out and pay for her meal.
I was going to say that.
Yeah, and then but never is willing to sort of consummate the romance. And so at some point you say, hey, you pay for my meal. Demands equality. We must be equal. But then always wants you to pay. Well, Trump's trying to say, okay, from now on, you're going to pay for the meals. What? My God, that's...
Exactly. Yeah. I was going to exactly propose the thinking on an abusive relationship.
Yeah.
You said that the bad girlfriend. That's the analogy. An abusive relationship where, for the United States, Europe is this guy that if the United States need to go to war against Russia, send Europe. Go there, you die. You die first. And we stay here protected from Russia by Europe. But when there's no threat, no threat.
That's the whole premise of it is false. Protected from Europe, from Russia, from...
Bless you.
Sorry about that. Got the sneezes.
No, don't worry.
But this notion that Europe has to be protected from Russia. Russia has not threatened to invade Europe. And over the last 20 years, Europe has every year been involved with helping fund and participate in military exercises targeting Russia for an attack. I mean, these people are absolutely delusional. They are, I don't know if you've ever encountered a bully that's out finger poking people in the chest. Finally, they finger poke the wrong person and he just busts them in the face, breaks their nose, and knocks them out. That's what's happening to Europe now. They have finger poked enough and Russia's going to bust them in the nose and knock them out. But Russia has zero interest in attacking Europe. Who wants all those blue, green-haired, rainbow-colored crazies? I mean, honest to God. They are dysfunctional societies. There is no popular mandate in any of the countries. Maybe Italy might be an exception. Apart from Hungary. Hungary had a majority. But, you look like what's going on in Germany. AfD, Alternative for Deutschland. They're considered, they're moving into becoming the strongest party, and they got like 28% of the vote, or popular opinion. The same for Nigel Farage's party in the UK. And Labour and the Conservatives equally are at minority numbers. So this is part of Europe's problem. They are lacking any kind of popular mandate. What are the numbers in Italy? Was Meloni's party a minority party or not?
Because here works more or less like Germany. So the government, it's formed by an alliance. So she does not have a majority of the votes. She has something like 30 something.
Okay, yeah.
Because
That's my point. So they wind up having to form these coalition governments that are based entirely upon compromise. But in this compromise, they are ignoring, so far the situations in these countries haven't gotten to a point of desperation or suffering where that creates a majority of folks saying, damn it, we're not going to take this anymore. We're mad as hell and we're not going to take it anymore. To quote the news anchor from the movie Network. You had that in the United States in this last election. Overwhelming number of Americans voted for Trump. And they're happy to see what Trump's doing, man. He is wiping out the federal bureaucracy, which has just been growing and growing and growing. No oversight, no discipline, nothing. Now, on the foreign policy front, I think Trump's got more problems and in creating more problems for himself. But domestically, he is, we're tapping into some levels of corruption, enormous. I was in a debate with a Zionist the other day, and this Zionist was telling me how bad Russia was because they got so much corruption. And I went, dude, are you even reading the news about what's been going on in the United States? When Nancy Pelosi becomes a multi-millionaire while being in Congress, Samantha Power, the head of USAID, triples her net worth by like $30 million. That across the board, what's being uncovered are levels of corruption in the United States that would make the Ukrainians blush. And yet, here's the United States lecturing everybody else on their corruption. We need to shut the F up. We're in no place to lecture anybody else about corruption. It's rampant in our system. In fact, what you're going to find out is that the USAID money was used in the Maidan back in 2014. And that there are members of Congress. I bet you Lindsey Graham has gotten money cycled back to him. Money from the USAID went overseas and it comes back into his campaign coffers. Yeah, so let's, I don't want to hear another damn word from any American saying anything about any other country's, quote, corruption. We clean up our own act, then maybe we got room to talk. But until then, shut up.
Yeah, and if this is important for the Brazilians that will watch this program later, when I put subtitles, this is important for you to have the perception here on this thing. This is one thing because the other show, and then you talk to Pepe, and you kind of starting to get the picture how the Brazilian mind work about the United States. And most of the people, especially what they self-call themselves, the right nationalists, whatever, the Bolsonaro troop, they really believe, the United States is this beacon of democracy and most uncorrupt place in the planet, and also about Europe. And I can tell you, Europe is a rotten egg. If you see all the scandals of Ursula von der Leyen, what I call Ursula von der Leyen.
No. Ursula fond of lying.
Fond of lying.
Enamorado de la mentira.
Exactly.
Right,
for us,
right.
It works von der Leyen because it looks like a von der Leyen name.
Yeah. No, I understand.
Fly.
Yeah. So because that's where English comes. The English in terms you can do it lying as in lion the animal, or lying as in mentira, telling a falsehood. I think it's more appropriate.
Blade.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Yeah.
You like that one?
Yeah, like a hooker in a bordello. Yeah, she's
Exactly.
fond of lying. Yep. Fond of getting screwed by the United States. That's so yeah, we got all the double entendre in the world here. You can rename your show the Marcelo Double Entendre Show.
I like the idea. I'll think about that.
Yeah. But this is the United States is just far more sophisticated in its corruption. That is the difference. The levels of corruption that have gone on in Brazil and Argentina. Of course, God, it's hilarious what's happening in Argentina now with Milei and his cryptocurrency scam. He's going to do himself in. This will so much for the Argentine experiment. And hopefully Trump and Musk, they all understand this. When you're going to take on the deep state, you, by God, better make sure you don't create any vulnerabilities where you can be attacked. Because you create one opening and they will be on you like a chicken on a bug. And everybody that's ever lived in the campo and the countryside around chickens, you know what happens when they see a bug, boy, particularly roosters. There you go. They look and then they go charging towards it and eat it. So.
Yeah, no, exactly. What you mentioned was also very, very important to realize when you said that, the levels of corruption was so big that made Ukraine blush. And most of Ukrainian corruption was also coming, as you mentioned, from, U.S. Congress people or deputies, whatever, just laundry money just coming and going.
Well, another example, there has been a complaint filed, and it was by my, I don't say we were business partners. I mean, we're still, we still have a relationship, but we're not trying to build our company right now and doing a lot of work. We sort of do our own things. But he filed a complaint with the Inspector General of the State Department and the Central Intelligence Agency and the Department of Justice against Jack Smith, that prosecutor. Credible evidence, multiple witnesses that Smith was running an extortion racket out of the International Criminal Court. So he'd go out basically into Serbia and threaten these Serbs, you pay up $2 million or else I'm going to indict you. So, and where did that cash go? I know for a fact I've got the evidence of a former U.S. ambassador to Guatemala who later went on to serve a senior position in the Biden administration concerning international narcotics matters. Well, this particular ambassador, both one had credible allegations against him for pedophilia, sexual raping a child in Guatemala. But then he also had 3 Swiss bank accounts, and we traced the money, had a $7 million. That Biden administration refused to investigate that. That's not the case now. This guy's in the crosshairs again. So, but I mean, these are examples of the corruption that's in the United States. And yet we want to sit around and point the fingers and, oh, look at Russia. Well, what has Putin done? This year alone, there have been 11 or 12 senior military officers, government officials arrested, charged with corruption and facing charges. Prominent people. Just because they were prominent, they didn't get protection now. So you can say, well, at least Putin's trying to clean the act up. And now Trump is. So now we can have a competition, see who puts more former senior government people in jail for corruption, Trump or Putin.
Well, at this moment, because Russia has been doing this for quite a while, but at this moment, I think Trump should win. I would expect Trump to win this competition.
Well, we're going to see. It has been, what Musk has uncovered, and then just the fury of the. It's primarily the Democrats, but there are also some Republicans punching back because they're scared of that. He's going to expose their corruption. That's what's going on. And
we see Glitch McConnell, for example, just voting against everything that Trump proposes.
Well, look at Mitch McConnell, how wealthy he's become. It's just, you can't make this up. He's another creature of Washington that has been there for so long, and a $200,000 government salary, and he's an incredibly wealthy man. I was just gonna check real quick, see. Just let me ask a question here to find out. Stand by.
Okay.
I'll ask the question. What is Mitch McConnell's net worth? Let's see what the answer is. Yeah, $48 million. Okay? $48 million.
That's a hell of a lot of money, Larry.
Six years ago, it was estimated at $34 million. He claims he got all this wealth because his father gave him money, his dead father. He got a big inheritance also from his wife's family. Bullshit.
Yeah, right.
His base salary of $174,000, and the guy's worth almost $50 million. And they want to lecture Russia or China on corruption? Please.
Yeah, you remember Nancy Pelosi when she went, well, that one lost a hell of a lot of money recently when NVIDIA's stocks got busted by DeepSeek. Because she had a hell of a lot of money on NVIDIA, for example, stocks on NVIDIA.
Yeah, no, this is what's got to be exposed. And in this, expose the judges too. You're going to find that some of these judges are connected. They're getting kickbacks. The family members are tied into some lucrative financial transactions. They just, I hope Trump brings a blowtorch to it, just burns it down to the ground. Because this corruption has enabled the U.S. government to do nothing but foster wars overseas and inflict death and mayhem and suffering on other people.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm getting cranky in my old age.
Well, I don't blame you. I'm 44, not that young, but I still have some steps, and I'm getting cranky because all of that.
Yeah, you're the age of my son.
Oh, cool. Yeah, you're probably the age of my dad, but if he had made through a little more.
Yeah, I'm 70 years old, so I'm an old guy.
Yeah, my dad would be 73 this year.
Same age range. Yeah.
We'll be there. Okay, Larry, let's move, because this is kind of breaking news. Not so breaking, but kind of breaking news. The pre-meeting that Lavrov and was it J.D. Vance? No, was
no, the Marco Rubio, Michael Waltz, and Stephen Witkoff.
The Wolf.
The Wolf, yeah, is Alex Cristoforo calls it. That's a great, the Harvey Keitel character from
Harvey Keitel, exactly, from Pulp Fiction. Fantastic character. Well, yeah, they just had the first meeting.
I think fast, I act fast, and remember that?
You clean the blood, you grab brains.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Fantastic. One of the best movies ever, my opinion.
Yeah.
So yeah, and also that was very interesting because they got the wolf, but Lavrov got the head of Russian sovereign. I had to write this down because I would never remember this. The head of Russian Sovereign Wealth Fund.
Usarov.
Usarov, exactly.
Yeah. Well, not just the head of sovereign wealth. I mean, he's got a long-time relationship with Putin. He's sort of, in the past, some people called Alexander Dugin Putin's brain, and I know and like Alex a lot, but that's not at all the case. The guy with the real relationship with Putin is Usarov. I think the United States is actually at a real disadvantage going up against Usarov and Lavrov. They're under. This is. Sometimes you can be in a negotiating situation where there's something that each side wants. I mean, let's just say it's a couple wanting to get divorced and both of them want to get out. All right, so at least they both have a goal in mind that is somewhat comparable. In this case, the United States wants Russia to stop attacking Ukraine, to end this war. Russia has no interest in ending the war just to end the war. They're winning it. And the reason they're in this war is not because they hate Ukrainians. It's because the Ukrainian government had been taken hostage, basically, by the West and had catered to, here it was, the West claims to despise Nazis, right-wing ultra-extremists. And here was embracing and funding these right-wing ultra-extremists in Ukraine, who were, let's call them the descendants of Stefan Bandera. And so they were doing that, and then they were threatening Russia militarily. So Russia said, no mas, niet, and they're going to destroy. Niet means niet. Russia's going to destroy the Nazi foundation in Ukraine, root it out, and then demilitarize. It's the sense it's like cutting off the testicles of a bull. Turn that bull into a steer. That's what's going on with you. They're gonna remove their testicles, so they can no longer represent a threat to Russia. And they're not about to make a deal. They're not going to have a ceasefire in place and freeze the line of contact. No, they're going to keep pushing forward until the United States and Ukraine meet their demands. And Russia's demands were very, very clear. That, number one, Ukraine's got to cease all military operations in Donetsk, Luhansk, Zaporizhia, and Kherson. Get out of there. And then, Ukraine's got to say, okay, we renounce any intention, desire whatsoever to join NATO. And then Ukraine is going to have to agree that Crimea, as well as the other four republics, the Donetsk, Luhansk, Zaporizhia, Kherson, are permanent parts of Russia. Then Ukraine's going to have to say, okay, you agree to a plan to downsize its military and turn it into more of a national police force. Then denazify, get the Nazis out of the government and out of the schools, and guarantee the rights of the Russian speakers. Those are the preconditions that Russia's insisting on before you actually have negotiations with Ukraine. Now, I believe that Russia is not going to compromise on any of those. Russia's not going to make concessions on any of those. Why does it need to? It's under no pressure. So we'll see where this goes. The good news is Russia and, basically Washington and Moscow now are talking together on a diplomatic level. They're going to reestablish, get the Russian ambassador firmly planted in Washington and vice versa, and the U.S. ambassador in Moscow. probably reopen some consulates that have been closed, and hopefully lift the travel restrictions so that there can be free travel now back and forth between the United States and Russia. Because right now, if you want to travel to Russia from the United States, it is a pain in the ass. You've got to fly to Turkey or Qatar or Egypt and then do a layover and then fly in from one of those locations. And what could normally be, say, a 10-hour flight direct ends up becoming a 24-hour adventure.
And you're on the other side of the ocean. I'm just next door and I have to do the same.
Yeah. No, I know.
It's ridiculous.
I know Alistair Crook recently had to travel to Moscow. And again, it turns out to be, that should only be a matter of hours just by virtue of being close. It should be only a 4 or 5 hour flight direct. But no, got to go through Turkey, got to wait. It ends up being, 14, 16-hour day.
Yeah, exactly. But I've seen some reports, and I also, Alex Christopher mentioned this today on his movie. I was just watching it, it just came out. And this is something that I've been saying since I started the channel. I cannot say that I was saying before that because I cannot prove. But since I started the channel, I've been saying this. Well, I do believe that Russia can agree to a ceasefire, let's call it, it's not ceasefire, if all the objectives are given to them. Like, for example, we want to denazify, we want to demilitarize. Most likely they will ask for Odessa because I really do not believe that they cannot end this without the Odessa. If the United States comes to the table and say, hey, look, I'll give you all this, I lift all sanctions, and we're good, I think they would say, yeah, okay.
Yeah, but the United
That's
States
what we wanted. We would die for it, so now we're not going to die.
Yeah, but the U.S. can't give that. Yeah, all the U.S. can do is try to tell Ukraine what to do, and it remains to be seen if Ukraine is going to listen to what Trump and company are saying. So far, they're saying no. They're telling Trump to screw off. So we'll see how that works out. They're counting on the Europeans being able to step up, where the Europeans don't have the economic depth to step up. And they keep forgetting what's happening on the battlefield. The Russian offensive is accelerating. They're taking more and more territory every day. And the West just isn't reporting on it. It's like I can best illustrate what's happened in the last 24 hours. So remember yesterday, this Delta regional jet tried to land in Toronto. I guess it was Toronto, and the plane flipped on landing. Turned upside down. Now, fortunately, none of the passengers were killed. It's sort of a miracle. Well, that's all the news is covering right now in the United States. Wall to wall. There's not been a word one said about the meeting in Saudi Arabia between Russia and the U.S. officials. They're not covering it at all, which is interesting. So this, Trump. I think Trump's intent is to walk away from Ukraine and walk away from NATO. And then at that point, NATO is going to, I think, ultimately implode on itself.
Oh yeah, Europe cannot do it by itself. That's the big thing. That's the big thing. As we started today, I was saying exactly that. It kind of got very clear to me that the J.D. Vance, what he said in Munich, that was what's it, the dusk or the dawn of NATO, the end of NATO.
Yeah.
He said, you want to go to Ukraine? All right. Article 5 is out of the table. So that's basically saying NATO's worth nothing for you. It is for us, but not for you.
NATO is just a grift. NATO is just a grift.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And just for us to finish, Larry, the meeting in France, the children meeting in the kindergarten play yard.
Yeah.
How do you
yeah,
take from that? What do you take from that? Because I saw yesterday or the day before yesterday, the Chris Stormer, that he said that, yeah, we're going to send 20,000 troops
25,
to Ukraine.
25.
Oh, dear Lord. I'm sorry. That makes a completely different case now. 25,000 troops.
Yeah.
Then
yeah.
what?
No, Europe, the old Beatles song, I've given all I've got to give. They've given all they've got to. There's no more to give. The European warehouses basically are empty. In terms of soldiers being able to assemble a force they could do of any, they simply don't have the size of military required to provide any significant support to Ukraine. No, Europe is done. They're irrelevant.
Stick a fork on it.
Yeah, that's one way. They are fully cooked.
Well, I just hope people start to realize that here in Europe, because the tensions are getting, are warming up, and this sounds a lot to me like a pre-World War scenario. People meeting here and there, agreeing on things, and then other people saying, no, this is different. For us, it doesn't work like that.
Well, look, what's really going on here is the United States is come to the conclusion that because of this alliance between Russia and China, we have to destroy that alliance. We have to split them up. This goes back to, the Nixon doctrine in the 1970s was predicated upon that opening to China, recognizing China as the sole Chinese territory, no longer recognizing Taiwan as an independent country. All of that was to use China as a wedge against the then Soviet Union. It wasn't because the United States, this is like the supermodel who marries the ugly fat guy. Not because he's good looking, not because he's charming, not because he has a great sense of humor. He just got a big bank account, something she can use. It's like, why would they hang out with Harvey Weinstein, example? Well, so the United States hung out with China for those years. And now all of a sudden we're saying, no, we got to get back. We got to get close to Russia again. We got to get Russia on our side because those nasty Chinese, we got to deal with those nasty Chinese. Well, I think Russia and China both understand what's afoot and are not going to fall for this, but we'll see.
Yeah, that's scenes for the next chapter.
Yep.
LarryJohnson, my great friend, thank you very much again. Remember, everybody, that all the links are on the description for Larry's socials, for the IDM socials. It's PMD in English, Press of Mass Destruction.
Yeah, Press of Mass Destruction, yeah.
Exactly. And follow him, especially on the blog, on his site, sonar21.com. Fantastic news every day, and just amazing articles. And he posts also the interviews that he goes everywhere doing that. And Larry, we're starting and ending with more cheering and relaxing conversations than previously, so things look slightly better.
Tensions for now are down. We'll see how they hold.
Yeah. Thank you
All
very
right, my
much.
friend. Yeah, we'll see you later. Ciao.
Bye-bye. Ciao.